Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest is a pioneer of the concierge industry as we know it today and the author of multiple nonfiction books, including The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness, The Little Bird on Your Shoulder, Rainbows and Banana Peels, and The Concierge Manual. Her name is Katharine Giovanni, and my interview with Katharine will follow the teleportation sound. Katharine Giovanni, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners and tell our listeners a little bit about your difficult childhood and breast cancer survival.
Well, I'm the author of 12 books, slightly overachiever here. I'm also a forgiveness coach, and I've been speaking probably for over, never mind how long I've been speaking. Let's just say decades. The forgiveness journey probably started when I was a kid, to be honest. You know, when I was in the 8th grade, I was horribly bullied because I was different. And my parents were very pickled, which means they were really alcoholics, and they got a horrible divorce. So I tried to commit suicide, and I turned into one of those kids, you know, the kids I'm talking about. And I just kind of floated through life with one or two friends and just kind of bounced around until my mother fell down a flight of stairs, broke her hip, and ended up in the hospital. And even my mother couldn't get a gin and tonic in the hospital. So she dried out, and we sent her to rehab, and we spent the next 3 years closer than sisters. We forgave each other. We were absolutely tight. And then she died of breast cancer. And that was the flashpoint of my life, quite frankly, because I knew if I didn't change, I was going to die. Flat out knew it. So I quit drinking. I've been sober for 34 years. And I kind of started this journey of forgiveness, quite honestly. I'm a stage 3 triple positive breast cancer survivor of 12 years. So went through that. But I finally figured out the true secret to forgiveness a couple years ago. And I wrote about it in my most recent book.
One of your nonfiction books that you've written is called The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness. Without spoiling too much of that book, what is it about?
Everybody on the planet tells you that you need to forgive. Everybody. Nobody teaches you how. And what if I don't want to? Then what do you do? So everybody listening to this broadcast right now, 10 out of 10 of you, on a 10 scale, with 10 being unforgivable, train wreck, and 1 being the easiest person in the world to forgive, every one of you are thinking of your number 10 person. And that's the problem. You're thinking of the person that caused you the most pain. So of course you don't want to forgive. And some people are unforgivable. There are unforgivable things out there. And everybody's unforgivable pain threshold is different. So it may not even be appropriate for you to forgive them. But in my system, which is a step-by-step system that lays out exactly how you can forgive everybody, I want you to start with the easy ones. I want you to start with the guy who cut you off on I-95 South. I want you to forgive the person who cut you off on aisle 5 of the grocery store the other day. Easy people. But there's a few PSAs. First of all, just because I forgive you doesn't mean I want a relationship with you. I probably don't. And this next one is what trips absolutely everybody up. And I think we were taught it when we were in kindergarten, when the teacher said, oh, go, say you're sorry and then everything's okay. Just because I forgive you doesn't mean I'm giving you a pass. It doesn't mean you were correct. You are still a nuclear waste dump. You were still wrong. I'm forgiving you for me. I'm doing it because I want you out of my head. That's it. I want to stop thinking about you. I want to stop talking about you. When I see your name and the memory comes into my head, I want neutrality. And that's what I can promise. I can promise you that my system will remove the emotional component to that memory. And even everybody says forgive and forget. I think whoever coined that should be shot, frankly, because nobody forgets. Nobody. But I can remove the emotions from it. That I can promise.
I'm going to note to our listeners that I absolutely do not in any way condone actual violence. You were just speaking hyperbole there with the. Okay.
I was not being serious. Whoever came up with that phrase probably worked really well for them back in the days when they came up with it. But today, I don't know anybody on the planet who can forget something traumatic that happened to them. I just don't. Maybe there's a unicorn person somewhere on the planet that can forget people what happened, but I'm not your girl. I'm not going to forget it. But I can be neutral about it. Now I have gotten my number 10 level people down to a forgivable level. And you're not going to do that overnight, by the way. It's going to take a little time to get those unforgivables down to a forgivable level. But I can look back at my past now and I can see the pockets of love that were there. I can see the adults that were trying to help me at the time when I was a kid. So my past is kind of been taken over by love, quite frankly. And it's using the method. I want you to start with the easy ones. I want you to start with the people you label a one, a two, or a three. Start with those because those easy ones, they're going to make you feel better.
What is your forgiveness method, and what makes your forgiveness method different than other forgiveness methods?
My forgiveness method is different because I actually have a method. There are not many out there that I could find. Most people, there's hundreds of books that have been written on this topic, but I've come up with a way of actually a step-by-step system. So, in short, I want you to sit down and I want you to write a list of all the people you think you need to forgive, right? And then I want you to rate them from 1 to 10, 10 being awful, 1 being easy. And you could have 7 number threes if you want to. That's fine. Don't care. You could skip a number. That's also fine. And then using the mantra I have in the book, I want you to go through the list, starting with the easy ones and slowly working your way up to the list, never doing more than 10 per night. And I want you to do it before you go to bed at night because your body heals itself while you're sleeping. And this is powerful energy. And the secret sauce to the method is what people don't understand is you need to forgive the energy. Einstein did prove that energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just transforms from one thing to another. And everything on our planet, including the microphone that's sitting on my desk in front of me, has energy around it. So the reason people look at me and say, Catherine, I did forgive them. I did. I did the work, but I'm still tripped up by it. Well, the reason you're tripped up by it is because you didn't forgive the energy. Forgiving the energy is the key because that's really what's going to set you free.
If one forgives, does it mean that the person or people being forgiven was right? And is it possible to forgive an unforgivable act?
If you forgive somebody, it doesn't mean they were correct. It doesn't mean I'm all of a sudden giving in and saying, oh, well, you were right all along. That's about as far from the truth as anything I've ever said. Because forgiveness is selfish, a good kind of selfish. Forgiveness is personal. I do it for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me because I'm this one sitting here thinking about it. The person you're mad at isn't thinking about you at all. They're going about their life. So that being said, to be perfectly blunt, you can forgive dead people too, because where they are or where they're not doesn't matter a lick. Because if they're alive in your head, they can be forgiven. My method also does not require you to reach out and call or text somebody. Forgiveness doesn't always mean repair. Forgiveness means I want to be released from the pain of thinking about you all the time. That's what it means to me.
You've written some other nonfiction books, and three of them that uh, I'm going to mention in this question are The Little Bird on Your Shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
Rainbows and Banana Peels, and The Concierge Manual. Without
Mm-hmm.
spoiling too much of those books, what are each of them about?
The concierge manual, I spent over 25 years in the independent concierge industry. I'm one of the founders of the industry, created a international association, and I retired from that industry in 2020. And the concierge manual, which is now in its sixth edition, is going to teach you step by step how to start a concierge business from soup to nuts. The other book is Rainbows and Banana Peels is a story about my breast cancer journey. In fact, I wrote that book on my cell phone in the chemo chair because I was bored. I am an overachiever. Shocker. But back in those days, which was 12 years ago, nobody told you what to do. This is actually a true story, but I don't think they do it today. But back in those days, they sent you to chemo class. Not kidding. You sit in this little airless room and you're listening to a nurse tell you all the horrible things that are about to happen to you. And you're already scared because you've got stage 3 cancer or whatever else you've been diagnosed with. So halfway through, my brain snapped. And then after the thing was over, I walked up to Nurse Ratchet, which is what I lovingly called her for the rest of the year. And I said, I'm not going to get all of those. I live in the South. She looked at me and she said, Oh, honey, you're going to get most of them. I said, No, I'm not. Fast forward 1 year, she kind of accosted me in the hallway and she said, Mrs. Giovanni, what are you doing? My knee-jerk reaction was to say, I'm just walking down the hall, but I wasn't sure what she was asking me. She said, What are you doing? You're not as sick as you should be. And I smiled at her and I said, Well, I'm eating clean and doing all the things I'm supposed to do. But you remember a year ago when I told you I wasn't going to get as sick as everybody else? That's what I'm doing. Your mindset is one of the most powerful health tools you have at your disposal. And Rainbows and Banana Peels is about that. The little bird in your shoulder is teaching people how to tap into their intuition. We're all born with it. No, it's some people are born with it knowing that they're already intuitive, and some people have to be reminded. But everybody in the planet is intuitive. Everybody. You either see it, hear it, feel it, or know it. Some people walk into a room and it just feels off. Or you shake somebody's hand, you're reading their resume, they look great, they're acting great, they're dressed perfect, their resume is perfect, so you hire them, and 3 months down the road, you think, I knew I shouldn't have hired that person. Well, that was the little bird in your shoulder giving you a warning. The little bird has actually saved my life 3 times. Not that I'm counting particularly, Aaron, but it has. And it can help you too. You just have to learn to listen to it.
Regarding your work pioneering the independent concierge industry, what was it like to be a pioneer of an entire industry?
Um, that's a really interesting question. In all the years I've been doing this, nobody's ever asked me that before. Okay. What was it like? It was scary, to be honest with you, because there was nobody to teach you anything. It was like bushwhacking up a mountain with with only a map, and I didn't even really have a map. Back then, everybody's used to the hotel concierge idea. It's been around for decades and centuries. And the independent concierge industry was started by a core group of hotel concierge who correctly thought if I could do this for hotel guests, I bet I can bring it to mainstream America. And they did very successfully. So when I started, maybe there were 20 concierge companies around the US, and I got into the field and there was nobody to teach you anything. There were no books, there were no classes, there were barely any articles. Our computers had floppy disks and dial-up modems. I am that old. And so there was nothing. So we literally had to teach myself how to do everything. And after I figured it out, after about 6 months to a year, the telephone started to ring because I figured out how to do a website by don't ever ask me to do this again, but we didn't have 2 dimes to scrape together back in those days. My husband's like, "Well, you're clever. You could figure out how to do a website." So I read, this is a true story. I read the Microsoft Word help file and figured out how to do a very rudimentary website, and I put it up online. And the emails and telephone calls started very quickly with people just asking for help. How did you do it? How do you figure out what to charge? So I decided to help them. And my husband came into my office one day and said, Why are you doing this for free? I said, that's the $1 million question. And that's how it all started. I pounded out the first edition of the Concierge Manual, and everything is kind of history since then. That's why they credit me with being one of the founders.
What are the easiest and hardest parts about writing books for you?
Think, the hardest part about writing a book is, sometimes you just you hit this wall. But I write books a little bit differently. See, everybody thinks when you write a book, At least most people do. You have to come up with the title and then you start with the introduction and then you start with chapter one, chapter two, chapter three. That's not how I do it. I don't even have an outline, to be honest with you. I will sit down and I will write whatever I'm feeling, and that might end up being chapter 10, but I'll just sit down and write. I've advised many young writers. It's like, if you don't know where to start, just start. Just start writing whatever you feel like writing. And that's how I've written every single book. I write whatever topic I think of the topic, and I know I'm writing the Concierge Manual and it's a business book. So where should I start? I guess I should start at the beginning. I should start with, where you get your website and how you do your business thing. Or if I'm teaching people if I was writing The Little Bird in Your Shoulder, okay, well, how should I start? Well, they need to know how to tap into their intuition. Okay, I'll start with that. So, and then after I think everything is finished, then I put it into chapters and then I title the book. So I think the hardest part is usually starting. You can't start every book, but like Snoopy did, it was a dark and stormy night. Yeah, I started one of my books like that just to be fun. But that's the hardest part, is getting started. But once you're started, just write from your heart, write from your gut, and pay no attention to what everybody else tells you. Just write.
You mentioned very early on in the interview that you've written 12 books, and we've mentioned four of those: The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness, The Little Burl on Your Shoulder, Rainbows and Banana Peels, and The
Mhm.
Concierge Manual. What are some of the other books you've written?
Well, most of those are out of print. The Concierge Manual, I have written 8 times. I have literally written 8 concierge manuals, because when I first came out with it, it was a 3-ring binder. And then then I came out and I kind of bound it myself. And then the first edition, second edition, and then we had to revise. So I literally wrote that book 8 times. I also wrote a book that's out of print right now called God, Is That You? Um, Almost derailed my career, to be honest with you. It was a book that I wrote 20 years ago that teaches people how to have a two-way conversation with the other side, and I just don't think the world was ready for it back then. I have since rewritten it as The Little Bird in Your Shoulder. And then I wrote a couple books on how to train a group, and I wrote one book about how to speak, how to do a speaking gig. Those are out of print as well. I
Are
write
all,
a lot of things. I go through stuff and I write about it. I'm crazy like that because I figure if I can help just one person out there with something I've written, then it's a complete win for me. I love to write. It's kind of my happy place.
are all your books self-published, traditionally published, or hybrid published, or did you use a combination of publishing methods for your books?
Well, they're kind of a combination. When we first published the Concierge Manual, technically they're all self-published, technically. And I discovered that, at least back in those days, it would take a year for a formal publisher to get a book to market, right? So we decided to self-publish. So we founded a publishing company called New Road Publishing. And that's how all my books are printed today. We do it through New Road Publishing, but it's also New Road Publishing is us, my husband and I. We've published other people's books over the years occasionally, but it's mostly designed to do ours. And now we publish through I have an editor, I have a cover designer that is absolutely out of sight. She's so good. And right now I'm using Ingram Spark. But we have used all sorts of printing companies over the years. I've been doing this a long time, so it depends what decade you're talking.
Okay. Uh, a couple of questions to finish out this interview. You offer private sessions involving one-on-one virtual conversations, and this is listed on your website.
Mhm.
What are these private sessions? What types of them do you offer, and how do they work?
I still do private sessions with the concierge industry, helping people with their concierge business. But for the most part, I'm a forgiveness coach now, because you can read the book and there's worksheets in the back of the book, of course, and you can do the work yourself 100%. A lot of people do. But some people need help. They need help forgiving their number 10s. They need help forgiving the unforgivable. And that's where I come in because I can help them with that. And a lot of my sessions are coaching people through forgiveness because I do want you to start with the number ones, the easy ones, but when you get up to those hard ones, they're a bear. So if you can't forgive the person that's unforgivable, and you can't, some people can't even forgive the energy around the person, which is fair, then I want you to pick other things out of the memory. For example, let's say you were bullied in school like I was. We'll pick out one of my own memories. So I couldn't forgive the bully from school, so I picked out other things. Remember, Einstein always said everything has energy around it. So I forgave the school building, my childhood home, and the energy around these buildings. I forgave the desk, the table, the chair, the people that stood around and didn't help me, and the energy around these things. And in a private session, I will help you go through the process step by step.
What types of events do you speak at as a public speaker?
Ah, I do. I have been a concierge and customer service trainer for over 20 years. So I still speak on that topic occasionally, even though I've kind of retired from it. And now I speak on intuition and forgiveness mostly these days.
Katharine, you were a very interesting guest to interview. You were an amazing guest. I thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm going to include a short snippet of the pre-interview conversation I had with Katharine in the intro to the next episode, so stay tuned for that. Until then, this is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. Copyright Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.